Hey, everybody, and welcome to the South Kitsap Chamber of Commerce candidate interviews for the 2022 general election. What I've done is I've taken 6 races between the 26th Legislative District and the 35th Legislative District. I'm taking the 12 candidates, 12 interviews, spliced them together to come up with 6 videos for those 6 races. I've asked all the candidates the same questions. We were fortunate enough this year to get all the candidates to participate. We've also included the Kitsap County Commissioners race, which is District 3. District 3 includes north of South Kitsap, Bremerton, up into just a little bit north of Silverdale. So it's the central Seebeck area. Even though you don't live in that area, if you live in Kitsap County, you do get to vote in that race, so I would encourage you to check out that video also. And then lastly, a word on the video production itself. I am not a professional videographer, never claimed to be. So what I've done is I've taken the 14 videos, spliced them together. There may occasionally be an awkward silence. There may be some abrupt boom, next question, things like that. I've kind of cut out any small talk and courtesies that may have taken place throughout the course of the videos. So thanks for watching. I hope you learned a little bit of something here. If you did, make sure you tell your friends about it so that they can watch and make an informed decision. But again, I want to stress, most important, vote, get your ballot in by August 8th. I understand if you get your ballots in as soon as you get them, then there is less chance of getting political junk mail. So thanks for watching and have a great day. Hey everybody, it's Chamber Matt, and today I am meeting with Dan Griffey. Dan is the incumbent in position 1, the 35th legislative district. Legislative district, as far as Kitsap County is concerned, the 35th consists of kind of the Seebeck down through South Kitsap, kind of west of Sydney Road, and then it goes way down south. So it is a ginormous area. And Dan, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, Matt, wouldn't miss it.
All right, super. So hey, got a few questions for you, and so I guess we might as well just go ahead and jump in. And I usually jump in with I don't know, maybe this is the easiest question, but Dan, tell us about yourself and why are you running for the state representative?
So thank you for asking. For those of you who have not met me virtually or in person, my name is Dan Griffey. I've been a professional firefighter for 30 years, total experience 35 years. I've spent my entire 51 years in the 35th Legislative District. I'm married. I have 3 daughters. I have 4 grandchildren. And recently, due to a back injury, retired in June from my fire service career, and it was the honor and privilege of my life. I serve on the Public Safety Committee, the Local Government Committee, and the Transportation Committee. I also serve as a House Republican Whip, which is the best way to explain it is a sergeant at arms for the House Republicans for our meetings. I love what I do, and I've been in that position for 8 years now. And I think the real reason that I started running and the reason that I continue to run is I think that the rural district's voice needs to be heard, and it needs to be heard loud, and it needs to be heard clear. And I have no problem stating all those things very loudly and very clearly. So thank you for the time today, and let's move on.
All right, so Dan, the 35th is huge, and tell us a little bit about the demographics for the 35th real quick.
Well, it's really neat. I mean, I'm privileged as a state legislator to where my constituents are all basically the same. So if you go up to Silverdale Seebeck area, and I'm working with them on their Crosby Community Center, right? We lost the other community center that was a matching community center. It burned down this last year. So I wanted to help them modernize it, make sure that this old historic school building, one of the last ones of its kind in Washington State, is preserved. But I had the same issue down in Rochester. Rochester has Sweet Hall, and there were a group of people that were kind of desperate to keep their community alive, and they wanted a community center. I was able to help them get some capital budget requested monies to get that beautiful building off the ground. And out in Yelm, same thing. They're a rural community that have been absolutely independent. They've taken care of themselves their whole lives. Most of them was from a logging background, and they find themselves kind of awash in the change that Washington State has had. But they want to keep their rural, and they still want to have services so they can their friends and family can stay there and in the communities that they grew up in. And so I think we don't have as much diversity as some legislative districts, but again, it makes my job a lot easier. We're very rural, we're very independent. Our needs are a lot the same, and not a lot of legislative districts can say that.
All right, thank you. Hey everybody, thanks for joining me today. I am with James DeHart, who is running for Legislative District 35, position 1.
That's correct.
1. I got it. All right. So James, thanks for joining me today. And might as well get into some questions here. I'm going to be bouncing back and forth between James, and I think you're running it against Dan, right?
That's correct.
All right. So if all goes well, we'll be jumping between James and Dan here as we go through. So I guess the first question, James, is the $1 million question is, tell us about yourself and why in the world do you want to be a state representative?
Sure. So first off, I was born and raised in the state of Montana, and I moved to Washington State in 2006. And the reason why we did that is in 2004, Montana instituted a marriage ban in their constitution. And my partner and I at the time were like, let's go somewhere where we can actually be ourselves. And we came to Washington in 2006 after graduating college. And honestly, I have been given great opportunities ever since I've been here. And I want to do the same for the people of the state of Washington and give them opportunities that I was very fortunate to receive moving here. So to me, I have also worked for the state of Washington for 13 to 14 years, and then I took a leap of faith and I moved over to the municipal, and I now work for the Mason County Commissioner's Office as the Public Records Officer. So I've already been a public servant for now starting my 15th year, and I'm looking forward to making that transition over to the legislature and doing further work to better the lives of the state of Washington.
So the first one I've got for you is, one of the biggest challenges facing businesses today is the rising cost of doing business. And that might include, fuel prices increasing, inflation, rising labor costs, supply chain backlogs, regulations, taxes, because they got employment taxes, they got B&O taxes, they got payroll taxes. Honestly, it's almost like they got a tax for everything. So kind of a multi-part question here. What role does government play in helping small business keep their costs down? And then maybe what specifically would you look to do to help keep costs down?
Sure. So one of the issues is regulations, of course. And I like to say, regulations exist because something went wrong. Something happened that we need to correct a problem. And sometimes those regulations kind of overreach. And I think one of the best examples of that is the regulations for policing that my party did have to actually bring back and come to a little bit more of a sensible place with them. And so one thing that the legislature can do is revisit regulations every once in a while to see, number one, are they working? Number two, are they doing what is intended to be done? And are they harming or helping businesses? So to me, I would, if a regulation was up in question, I would want to look at the effects of that regulation, and I would like to. I kind of do like a Hippocratic Oath thing, do no harm. And if a regulation is doing harm in any way, shape, or form to anybody in the whole situation, let's correct that. Let's look at ways we can compromise to deal with that sort of an issue. And I would work with the businesses in the area to make sure that, you know, we would get their buy-in on certain regulations or get their input on how a certain idea would be implemented. So to me, the legislature, yes, instills regulations, but they can also take them away, and they can revisit them at later times and amend a bill or amend a law and work that way. So that way we can make sure that our local businesses are able to serve their community with dignity, and their prices are affordable for everybody, and they are able to make a decent profit, because that is what America is about your freedom to create a business that will help you and your family live a better life.
Okay, great. So kind of a follow-up to that question. You know, with the enormous budget surplus currently on the books for Washington State, do you support any type of tax relief for local businesses? And you know, if so, what might that look like?
And so it's a great question. It's a pretty broad question. So I would need to look at what's all going on in the world at that point, and what businesses we're talking about. There are, like, for the 35th LD, there are a couple of businesses and business practices that are very important. One is our shellfish industry, and the other is our timber industry. Both of those industries bring tons of jobs, tons of money into our communities. They help create better lives for the people around them, and create opportunities for people to live better lives with better pay. So I would absolutely support looking at, again, certain regulations, certain taxes, and certain industries, and see where we can help the most, make up some sort of budget shortfall somewhere if that would happen. But it's a very broad question, and we would just have to look at how the taxes and even the surplus will be affecting the area.
Let's dive into the first real question here for you then, Dan. Is, you know, one of the biggest challenges facing businesses and business owners is the rising cost of doing business. These costs, they include, you know, fuel prices, inflation, rising labor costs, supply chain backlogs, regulations, taxes, whether it's B&O taxes, employment taxes, payroll taxes, federal taxes, every kind of tax imaginable that business owners face. So the first part of the question is, you know, what role does government play in helping small businesses keep their costs down?
Well, I think government can and should play a big role. So let's talk about the things that business need, or just what your household needs. So if we want to compare and contrast what a business and individual household, the household needs stable, predictable cash flow in and stable, predictable cash flow out. And government affects that by raising taxes or lowering taxes. Same thing with business, but business has a further burden, a lot larger burden when it comes to the regulatory climate. We change regulations in Washington State too often. We should have our regulations be long-term, predictable, and stable. It costs our businesses a lot of money just complying with new regulations. Huge amount of money. They have sometimes local businesses, I hear horror stories of 2 and 3 people they're employed just to so the business can keep up with the regulatory climate that government has imposed upon them. The tax climate is also right now real burdensome, because they've been taxed 3 and 4 different ways, just like the person that doesn't own a business, just the family. Inflation is affecting our businesses as much as it is affecting their families. And the horrible thing is they have client loyalty problems, where if they can't get their supply chain fixed and they can't get the goods and services, people have a tendency to just leave and not patronize that business any longer. And the kind of the trifecta issue is crime. In Washington State, crime and retail theft is about $2.5 billion as measured by the Washington State Retail Association. So that's $2.5 billion of product that walks off the shelves. So there is kind of a trifecta of pressures put on our businesses: tax climate, regulatory climate, and then the public safety climate. And then we can put homelessness and housing and the fact that we have homeless encampments popping up all over the place, which and a lot of businesses cause a negative draw issue where people don't want to go because they go to a business or patronize a business because they want to feel safe. So government must establish long-term, stable and predictable regulations. So they don't have to have, different businesses do not have to have employ people just to comply with new government regulations. That would be step number one. Number two is we're going to have to do something about our workforce participation right now. There's all kinds of numbers out there measuring this issue, but the businesses are just going to tell you, we just can't get enough people to come to work. And for the most part, if they do come to work, they're not trustworthy, or they don't stay very long. And so the business is constantly then trying to employ, train new people, and then this constant revolving door. So we have to be patient. We have to be stable, government, I mean, and we have to understand what business is going through right now, and really reduce their tax burden. There's many things that we can do, but workforce participation, the public safety, and the tax and regulatory climate, those things our businesses need, and they need it now.
So kind of a follow-up to that question too, is, with the enormous budget surplus that Washington State has experienced over the course of the last year or so, do you think, I guess, first part, is there anything specifically that you could do or that the legislature could do to keep costs down? And then what about, a tax relief? Would you support any tax relief for the local businesses, kind of given the financial situation of the state?
Well, absolutely. So we have enough money to give some of it back. A lot of people don't understand this, but during COVID, people didn't stop purchasing goods. They just stopped where they purchased them from. Well, there's a lot of online purchases, which is really putting a lot of pressures on our local ma and pa establishments, the retail establishment, if you will, down the corner, the convenience store. There's a lot of pressures there because consumers have changed their habits. Well, Washington State changed the law, and probably righteously so, or it's collecting sales tax on all of the interstate purchases, which are the online purchases, which is a leveling factor with our retail establishments in Washington State. So that's a good thing. The problem is we have a lot coming in. We absolutely can rebate gas taxes that would help both our retail customers and our business purveyors, the people that run the businesses. So it would be a double whammy. We also have, since COVID started, I believe, given our state agencies kind of a blank check to do things, but in the guise of protecting people from COVID and this global pandemic, that are really not necessary any longer, and they don't need that extra amount of money any longer. So to make a long story longer, yes, absolutely, there is enough money to give some of it back. My seatmate, Representative McEwen, has worked on a B&O tax reform bill for about 10 years now, and I think this is a good year to really get it out. Now, why do you work on it for so long? Well, it is very complex, and when we're talking about business and occupation tax, it's a significant portion of Washington State's budget, and how we implement it and how we impose it on our businesses matters. And so we'll be working on I think we should, and I'm committed to working on bills that will do just that, make sure that our businesses can survive into the future through this tough economic time.
What are some of the major issues you see facing Washington State in the next couple of years?
Well, we must address what the majority party did to policing in Washington State. We have to. It doesn't take too much looking to see what we have done to law enforcement and law enforcement officers and their ability to be proactive in policing. It used to be that if one of our commissioned law enforcement officers had a reasonable suspicion that a crime was committed, they could just engage with the individual and a lot of times stop a crime before it happens. And those crimes are as heinous as murder, rape, and and so on. Terrible, terrible, unforgivable things. Those are all on a very rapid rise. The changes in the policing policies have emboldened criminal behavior, so much so to the point where you read an article in Kitsap County about a bank robber robbing a bank, calling 911 and actually complaining to the 911 operator that law enforcement were not supposed to be chasing him any longer because that was against Washington State's law. So it is very clear to me we've emboldened those people that would do ill will or evil to others in Washington State, and we have got to do something significant right now to reverse the policies that were passed 2 years ago and move into the future with smarter policing policies.
What are the major issues you see facing Washington State in the next 2 years?
Sure. So there are three issues that I can see affecting Washington State. The first issue is the issue of reproductive freedom and healthcare. That is on the ballot this year, and it is reproductive healthcare and safe legal abortion access is codified under RCW 9.02. However, that could go away if a legislature so decided to take that right and repeal it. So I would fight for a constitutional amendment so we can make sure that right is there for everyone. The second issue that is really affecting the 35th LD very much is infrastructure. So our roads and our bridges are all pretty much in disrepair, and we need to make sure that we have the modes to get people from point A to point B and not hamper their travel in any way, shape, or form. So a fixed bridge, a repaved road, and doing that in sustainable ways will absolutely help keep those roads from needing constant repair, and that in turn costs more money. And so again, so people can get from point A to point B without being hampered. And the third issue is education, and we need to ensure that kids get the best education they possibly can. Smaller class sizes, more intimate instruction between student and teacher. Those are issues that are truly the bread and butter of the kitchen table issues. And so we need to let people know that the legislature understands that the roads are in disrepair, the bridges are in disrepair, our education system needs to be better, and we need to protect our healthcare and rights. So those are three of my major issues going into the next legislative session if I'm so elected into office.
So the next question has to do with electricity and energy. How do you see Washington State setting itself up for success when it comes to increasing energy costs and the shift away from fossil fuels? The demand for electricity is going to increase rapidly. Washington State, some of its leaders support the removal of dams on the Snake River. And now we've got, a proposed ban on gas vehicles after 2035, I think, or something like that. How will Washington compensate for the loss of power supply while also demanding an increase in electricity dependence?
Sure. So Washington State is actually a leader in renewable energy and sustainable energy processes. And one of the greatest things every time I go back home to Montana to go visit my parents or my family is I pass by the Wild Horse Wind Farm right outside of Vantage. And that is one of the coolest places I've ever seen in the state of Washington. Those windmills are absolutely spectacular. They are bringing tons and tons of renewable energy to the area, and they're actually working. So let's build upon that, and so we can have them up in the mountains. We can have them just offshore, so we get the Pacific wind coming in. So that's one of my favorite renewable energy projects that Washington State has been a leader on. But then there's also the fact that Washington State is starting to make solar a lot more affordable, and so that's another big thing. And we have fields and fields and fields in Eastern Washington that are flat, no trees, nothing. We could put a nice little field of solar panels to bring that energy. The sun is free, we don't have to pay it, and as well as the wind. And then we also have hydroelectric dams. And yes, I understand the Snake River Dam issue. If we can at least keep some of those hydroelectric dams going, that would be great. But we would also have to look at the environmental impact and the salmon issue. So there are lots of different ways we can do this. But I truly believe that renewable energy such as solar, wind, and hydro are definitely the wave of the future. They are infinite on our planet. Well, the sun will blow up in a billion years, but we will absolutely be able to harness all of that energy and not have to run out of the fossil fuel that we have been dependent on for over a century. So to me, we need to really kind of hit those better environmental energy sources and really kind of move away from fossil fuels. Just, climate change is a big deal. And fossil fuel carbon release is a big cause of that. So I'm looking forward to bringing a lot more affordability to those renewable resources and get Washington on a path for success for the future.
How is Washington State setting itself up for success when it comes to the increasing energy costs and a shift away from fossil fuels? The demand for electricity is going to increase rapidly. Washington State supports the removal of dams in the Snake River. How will Washington compensate for the loss of power supply while also demanding an increase on electricity dependence?
Well, Matt, there are quite a few people in Olympia that don't believe that energy posture that we've adopted in Washington State is a good direction. What we should do right now is we should declare hydroelectric power as renewable and have it participate in the renewable portfolio that we currently have. Most people, Matt, don't understand that 90 to 99%, depending on your fuel mix loads or your energy mix loads, comes from hydroelectric power already. We have invested a significant amount of money through the initiative process because we didn't list hydroelectric as renewable to pay for the alternative portfolio that we currently have in Washington State, which would be wind and solar. Wind and solar do not produce enough base load power. So base load power would be between the hours of 5 o'clock in the evening and about 9 o'clock at night, late evening. That's the time when most people come home, they fire up their stoves, they plug in their cars, their electric cars to charge them. They tune up the heat in their house. Maybe their house has been sitting at 75 all day. They wanted a little cooler because you're in the summer, so they'll turn the air conditioning on. And all of those power generation loads for alternatives other than those that spin turbines at a really fast rate, predictable rate, and as in hydro, all of those do not produce predictable base load. And I think what you see California having to blackout, this last few weeks, their fuel mix or their energy load is very much higher dependent on wind and solar than Washington State. And what you saw is they ran out. We're at the point in time, again, we will run out in Washington State unless we have a better posture. I believe that we can do a mix of fully upgrading all the turbines on the Columbia, scrap all ideas of taking down the Snake River dams, look at ways that we can create larger impound, water impound mechanisms so we can more fully irrigate and produce power with those waters. And that is just slight modifications, Matt, to what we're currently doing. Just changing our impound by 10 to 15% ups the amount of water that we both get to protect fish with and fish habitats, but also what turns a turbine predictably and free to produce power for us. So we are going to have to do something totally different. I think the stance that the government has picked, battery electric, is our only way out, was a big mistake. There was a lot of things they forgot about. As a matter of fact, in Washington State, they tried to ban internal combustion engines. I made the point on the House floor, and I argued it as loud as I possibly could without getting gavelled, that you don't have to burn gasoline in an internal combustion engine. Let's understand physics. Let's understand the mechanics of the thing before we just make knee-jerk reactions. You can burn hydrogen in an internal combustion engine, and you get nearly zero emissions coming out the tailpipe. So if our wish is to reduce the amount of carbon emissions to go out, we can reduce carbon emissions, and we can also produce power very clean and very renewably.
Should Washington State be more concerned about controlling its spending and relying less on tax increases to pay for government? And part of that question is, what can state government do to better control its spending?
Well, I got a lot of ideas about that, and in a wonderful future, we would elect a new governor that was from a different party. They would fire all the department heads, and they would hire all new department heads, and we would remake this wonderful state. Well, we haven't done that in a long time, and we're suffering from it. So a lot of times in the state, you'll have people that spend entire careers right now, because we've had nearly 40 years, basically 40 years with one party in the governor's chair, 40 years of people being department heads. Well, that's a long time. The human animal can't pay attention at the degree they need to run those large agencies for that long without starting to slip or just go back to the easiest common denominator to fix something. So we need to take, and the state has every obligation to take a look at every dollar we spend, and is it programmatic? Was it spent in the right fashion, and did it fulfill the mission? So the way that I look at it is, what is our mission? What is our strategies and tactics to fulfill the mission? And we have to have a measurement tool to measure whether we are actually accomplishing our goals. We don't do that as well as we should. I really believe that automatic sunshine laws is something that is long overdue in Washington State. So what a sunshine law is, we pass a law that has a fiscal impact, meaning that it would take money from the hard-earned citizens and spend it, and hopefully wisely, and hopefully it will solve a problem. The Sunshine Committee then automatically, after 2 years of increased spending, would look at that, and they would answer those questions. Is it fulfilling the mission that we had set up that tax to fulfill? And is there better ways to do it? So I think that is one way to do it, but the best way really is to understand you just can't write blank checks to people. You've got to ask them how to perform better. You have to work with them on how to perform better. Washington State wastes a heck of a lot of money in bureaucracies. We could probably reduce our spending by 20% in Washington State if we really took a conscious effort in reducing the number of hands that has to touch a piece of paper just before one thing actually happens in the state. I mean, I love all of our state employees, and I think they do an amazing job. But Washington State has built bureaucracy on top of bureaucracy on top of bureaucracy, to where the state employees tell me they're frustrated because it's more often than not, they're answering the question of to a state or elected official, what are you doing, and not actually doing the job. So I know that there is a lot that can be done, but there is a lot that really should be done to reduce spending in Washington State.
Should Washington State be more concerned about controlling its spending and relying less on government taxes to pay for government? And, is there something specifically um, that Washington State could do to better control its spending?
So I like to look at government as a help function for society. And well, the government can't function without funding. And so the less funding that we have coming into the state and to help these social programs, the less we can help people. So to me, yes, you have to spend money to help people, but the benefit of helping people to get them on the right track, to get them into, say, a better job or a better situation in life where they can contribute more to the state, that's investing in our communities. And so to me, we need to make sure that our social programs aren't being hurt by spending decreases just because we need to rein back the spending, because people do rely on those services, and when they don't, it could be a real detriment to our society. And so I absolutely support fiscal responsibility, but we also need to realize that if we take programs away from the people, we really do a disadvantage to our citizens. And I again take kind of a hypocritical way of looking at things. And if the depletion of a program would hurt people, I would absolutely oppose
that. So this next question may not necessarily deal directly with business or be related to business, but it does play an important role in business and in the community, and that is the subject of homelessness and affordable housing. What role could the state play in addressing, should the state play in addressing homelessness and affordable housing?
Sure. So when I look at homelessness, I see a myriad of reasons as to why that exists. So there, for an individual, there could be a bunch of different reasons why they're homeless. It could be a mental health issue. They just they wouldn't be able to afford any sort of meds, and they just are kind of forgotten by the system, or they have lost their job and they are they're down on their luck and they just need a hand up. Or, there is the situation where people are homeless by choice. The former two, I would work with partners in the community as well as different other government organizations to make sure that we are upping our support for mental health care for people who can't afford it, for people who would need state insurance to get that, as well as also finding ways to create more affordable housing, like tiny house villages. I really, really support those, because everybody deserves to have a roof over their head and a warm meal in their stomach every day. It just makes you feel good, and it pushes you to better your life every day. Also, it's better for children too, because when children have a roof over their head, guess what? Their educational scores go up. They are more able to function in society, and it's important that people have a place to go. So affordable housing is a huge deal to me, and there are lots of different ways we can do that. We can buy old buildings and get community programs like Habitat for Humanity to come in and help create new affordable housing for everybody. And rent and mortgage prices right now are sky high, so that's another reason why people are possibly homeless. They just can't afford a home, and they can't afford a one-bedroom apartment. Right now in Olympia, a one-bedroom apartment is at almost $1,500 to $1,600 a month. I actually pay less than that on my mortgage, which is absolutely unfair to those who cannot get a mortgage. And so again, affordable housing is a huge thing. So many different reasons why people are homeless. Let's find many different types of solutions for it. There's not just one way to do this. So I'm all about working with chambers of commerce and other places, as well as grant programs, to get some good affordable housing going for the people.
Next question is to deal with homelessness and affordable housing. While this question, I mean, you alluded to it earlier, it's not directly related to business, but it does play an important role in business and in the community, and that is homelessness and affordable housing. What role could the state play in addressing homelessness and affordable housing?
Well, they should. So right now, the state, through Growth Management Act and Shoreline Management Act and so many other management acts, manage our way into not building housing. Right now, if you look at the three counties, Mason County that I represent is the lowest as far as permitting fees, but not by a lot, right? So just the cost to get the permit and then the bureaucracy that has to be engaged in just getting the ground to a flat state where you can actually start putting a foundation on it is mind-boggling and baffling. So we must do something serious about setting up innovation zones in Washington State. That would be zones that would be kind of in the gray area. It's not urban, maybe it's not totally rural, but we got to set up those areas of affordability. So we're going to have to zone it, and then they will come, as far as I believe. My belief is that that would be the case. Another thing that government can do is we spend about 500 million to $1 billion a biennium. Sometimes, I mean, the number fluctuates all over the place. So coming down with the exact number, but it's a neighborhood of $1 billion a biennium for homelessness and housing, and that money is spent very specifically on programs that employ people to hand out, to minister, if you will, to the homeless or the people that were suffering in the communities. I think that is a waste of money. We are going to have to, I think our problem with housing and housing availability and affordability is so monumental that we should take that $1 billion and figure a way to make housing out of it. And there's a lot of people that think, government paid for housing, the projects, all that kind of stuff, those were done poorly in Chicago and New York and that sort of thing. Well, we don't have to do it that way. We do not have to put big townhouse apartments that are multi-level up. We can put smaller infill housing as long as we zone it appropriately. We'll be able to build quickly. We can also set up something like a Habitat for Humanity sort of payback system. So it's not a direct gift to those people that are suffering from low income housing problems, and that you have to give back. We have low or no interest loans, but something big and real has to be done right now. My problem is that $1 billion could do a lot to build houses. And at this point in time, we're going to have to do something to build a significant number of houses. And the only way to really get it done is to just absolutely roll up our sleeves and say we're going to do it with our innovation building zones, with a revolving fund, if you will, for how people get into homes and housing. There's a lot we can do, but we got to start doing it now.
Last question. Sometimes I save the hardest for the last. Is why should the voters in Kitsap County in the 35th Legislative District, why should they support you as the next state representative in the 35th?
Well, I don't like talking about myself, and most people know me that I don't. But what I will say is my professional firefighting background has taught me that no one will be left behind. I have a no one will be left behind policy from my office. I talk to Democrats and Republicans alike. We work on issues alike. There's contrasts, severe contrasts between me and my opponent and the way we like to do things. I would more rather have government work as a friend in the background that is there to help when necessary, instead of something that's right there in your face. And all rural property owners kind of get what I'm talking about there. you don't really own your property any longer. And I believe you are sovereigns of nations under your own when you own property. I trust the people that live in my district and am willing to help them through any of their problems. I don't want to tell them what their problem is and then establish another requirement, another tax to fix that problem. I want to listen to them and always be that supportive person that I was for those many years as a professional firefighter. Professional firefighters are sovereign or problem solvers, and they don't like to fail. And so if the voters want a serious problem solver and somebody that absolutely does not want to fail in any way, then I think I would be a good person to vote for.
Why should the voters of the 35th district, specifically here in Kitsap County, support you as the next state representative from the 35th district? And before you answer that, I would like to point out, Kitsap County, the portion of Kitsap County that's the 35th is a little portion of South Kitsap, kind of west of Sydney Road, and then up into the Seaback area and stuff like that. It's a ginormous area. Mm-hmm. So the 35th doesn't apply to everybody in Kitsap County, but there is quite a few people in Kitsap County who are in the 35th, and so why should they vote for you, James?
So what you would get with me as your next representative is you would get somebody who has a dedication to public service. I grew up in a public service family. My mother was a 27-year-long elected official in my hometown in Montana, and she had the illustrious titles of Lucid Clark County Treasurer, Clerk, Recorder, Auditor, Surveyor, and Assessor all at once. And she worked her tail off for 27 years, and she went to work every day trying to better the lives of the people of the county that I lived in. I take that example every day with me when I go to work, because what public servants do is they help people. That is what they do. I, on a daily basis, work in transparency. And so what you would get with me is you would get a transparent representative. Everything that I would do would be out there for people to see, and I would make sure that my job performance was absolutely out there for people to look at, to judge, to evaluate me every time I'm up for a re-election. So to me, you would get somebody who is a workhorse that would help people, that would be transparent, and that would work daily to make the lives of the people of the 35th better for years to come, for generations to come. I care about the environment, I care about people's well-being, and I want people to live their best lives. And that's one of the reasons why I moved to Washington State. Washington State gave me the chance to live my best life, and I want to give those opportunities back to the people of the district.
So remember, this is James DeHart. He is running for position 2 in the 35th legislative district, which for South.
Position 1. Position
okay.
1.
Yep, that's why I say those things really slow, because it's like somebody always corrects me, and I'm doing like 14 of these interviews, and so
man.
So that's position 1.
Yeah.
Position 1. You see, but everybody's going to remember that now. James DeHart, position 1, legislative district 35. Election day is November 8th. Ballots should drop somewhere in the middle of October. So, there's 3 positions in the 35th that are up for re-election or up for election this year. There's the Senate position. There's 35th State Representative position 1 and position 2. Hope to have all those videos put together for you. Thanks, James, for joining me. It was a challenge for James and I. So thank you for getting back together with me, James.
Thanks, Matt. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye.